Okay, it's April 22nd, 6 p.m. We're at the middle school library. This is the Finance Committee meeting. I'll have everyone just go around and state their names so they can be recorded in the minutes. Start with you, Dr. Otto.
Dr. Otto, Superintendent.
Danielle?
Danielle Penza, Business Manager.
Mark Boyer, Assistant Business Manager.
George Higley, Sodexo.
Jeff Collins, Director of IT.
Kevin McCullough, Board Member.
Frank Seminaro, Board Member.
And Andrew Basil, Board Member.
Monica Hamill is unable to be here. She had a medical emergency.
That's correct. And we have Stephanie Weaver from the Reading Eagle with us as well. Okay, let's just start with a voice over IP. That's the first item on the agenda. Mr. Haas?
Yep. So I provided you with a summary of a project that I'm looking for your blessing on. Pretty much since I arrived, there's been, I'll say, problems ranging from very small to more usability type issues with the high school and the administrative building. They don't really have a phone system. The administrative building is all essentially individual phone lines and Centrix lines. The high school is kind of a hodgepodge of those same Centrix lines, as well as a very old classroom system, and then yet a third system to support the office. None of those systems use voice over IP. So what I've been looking at is a way to get a more consistent phone system in place and at the same time save us some money both in maintenance and in terms of usability so that we have consistent features between rooms and parts of the high school. Best example I can give you, people that sit 30 feet away from my office in the high school can't call an extension. They have to dial an outside line from their room, which is some ridiculous combination like 99 star 9. Then dial the full 10-digit just to get into us, even though we're literally only 20 or 30 feet away. By itself, not a big deal, but at the same time, we're also paying a premium to have all these individual phone lines that aren't connected. And then anytime we do any moves, like last summer, the guidance office in the high school had moved to the main office. We had to pay for all those relocations and coordinate all those. So they were without a phone probably for 24, 48 hours. And then we pay per line to get run or moved, anything like that. So what I'm proposing is a voice over IP system that would use our existing network infrastructure, equipment, cabling, and then anytime we would have to run a line or move a line, my staff would be able to handle that so we wouldn't pay any cash out. And we could coordinate it in a much easier, simpler fashion than dealing with contractors and Windstream. And then further with I guess we don't still know exactly where the administration will end up next year around this time, but we do know they won't be at Matthew Brook as I understand it. With all of those lines to move, my estimate for that is around $5,000 to have what's probably in the neighborhood of 30 phone lines moved from that building to another location. We'd be able to avoid that expense if we did it with a voice over IP system. So what I have there is very simple, kind of a cash flow model for 5 years. The out-of-pocket for the system, and I just realized I have the wrong year on that, would be approximately $43,000 for a voice over IP system that we'd be putting into our data center. We'd estimate that we would save $5,000 in terms of that move next year for the administration building, that we'd be able to handle all of that ourselves. Additionally, by eliminating all these individual phone lines that we support, I'm estimating that we'd save around $8,000 annually on our phone bill. So as you can see, it takes a little over 4 years before we break even from a cash perspective on that. The reason I'm sitting here is, as I've been kind of investigating and doing all this research, essentially there's a lead time to get some wiring changes done at the high school that could be in the neighborhood of 60 days. So if I don't have the blessing to move forward by what I have on here is May 3rd, we'd have to delay this another year, unless we just decide we don't want to do it. We'd have to delay it another year because we simply won't be able to get it done this summer. So, and then due to the budget freeze and the way that that's worked in terms of the spending, I guess this year and really all the previous years or recent previous years, I'd be able to cover that out-of-pocket expense, barring any major failures between now and the end of June. I'd be able to cover that $43,000 just by reallocating some balances in my budget. So it's not new money; it's really just reallocating, things that we weren't able to spend either because of the freeze. Some because of my newness and conservative nature last summer. I didn't know what to expect as the year rolled on. So I kind of delayed things on my own, kind of to wait and see how it would work out. So I think I can cover all of that, again, barring any really major issues.
How did you come up with the numbers, 8,000, 5,000, in terms of Did you call Windstream and ask them what the cost
I
would be?
reviewed-
Did you?
Back in, I don't know, probably the middle of the winter, I reviewed probably 100 pages worth of our phone bill and went through line by line, identifying what we'd be able to cancel. And essentially, it's all these individual lines. You know, in my office, there's 5 staff. We each have our own phone line, paying $30 a month for those.
Gotcha.
Similar for some people at the high school,
Right.
and then really the entire
Okay.
Matthew Brook building is that way. So all of those phone lines get eliminated. We had one large, it's called a PRI circuit, to the high school, and then run everything over the IP
We can lay one
network.
out there for those.
How about any increased bandwidth that we're going to need because we're bringing all this voice over IP?
No, it's only the high school and admin building, so we have a gig link between those 2 buildings, and we don't come close to using that up. So no, we won't need anything else in terms of bandwidth. The only way we would is if we added another site, or the administration building would say lease space in some unpredictable place next year. Then we could potentially, we'd have to add it
You'd have to
anyway.
add it no matter what, right?
But that would be the only thing I could see in terms of additional bandwidth.
Can our current phones be used?
You don't have any.
No, that's actually probably one of the biggest costs. You actually have to switch
If you don't buy, you have to actually buy a phone.
handsets for all the
Is that
classrooms.
included?
Yes, that's included in there. I don't know if it's the biggest without going through the bill of materials, but it's the most obvious cost.
Okay.
You have to put a new phone in every classroom in the high school and every office that currently has one.
Okay.
And that's kind of buried in my estimate in terms of the 800 annually. We have phones that fail, a couple here and there every year. So, we're always kind of investing in that old system, so that would hopefully go away with new phones.
And this is basically just a one-for-one swap out. So where there's a phone today, there'll be an IP phone to replace it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we're not looking to put these phones in people's homes so they have
Oh my
IP
God,
and all that
no.
kind of stuff.
No.
So this cost is just
Yeah, I
a
think that-
one-for-one replacement of what we have today.
Yeah, I think the only example we talked in the high school cafeteria, they have a cordless phone, and we don't want to buy a cordless IP phone. They're just cost prohibitive, so we probably put one at the cash register and one in the office, and just have them on the same line. But again, we don't pay line charges, and it's all an internal extension. So, for $100, we could have that extra phone in there for them. But essentially, it's a one-for-one. Some places we eliminate entirely, probably, but we're not adding features or home phones, like you said.
Any thoughts?
We've got the freeze on to hopefully get, save some money, but if it's allocated already, I think it's worth doing, get it done and over with, before that problem gets a lot worse.
Do we still have money in our capital reserves?
There's money in capital.
I mean,
So you could
I'm-
kick the phones out of there at least.
that's what I was thinking, as opposed to out of the operating
And some other
budget.
equipment too, you'll need, probably can come out of there.
Yeah, you probably need something for it, but take that money out of capital.
That'd be my recommendation. Okay.
It's the same, so.
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
worry.
but-
Yeah, but it's just coming out of different
Yeah.
But
buckets.
it's coming down to different budgets.
Yeah.
Plus,
Right.
like I said, you won't have those monthly bills where all those individual phone lines.
Right.
Are you going to take a formal board vote on that?
I think we'll bring it up tonight. Yeah.
So the phone equipments, you want to allocate that from capital reserve?
Yes.
Can you break that out that way?
Sure, it's you're reinvesting in the phones.
No, I was actually asking
You even have
Jeff.
that
Oh.
43,000?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be all
I
of
think
it?
it's pretty much all of it. I mean,
Okay.
it's a variety of parts, but essentially it's all the phone.
Oh, it's all equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all one vendor, one purchase order that we put in.
Okay. Mr. Haas, thank you for your input. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to step out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the breakfast and lunch prices. We have a recommendation to increase the prices slightly. And I guess what we're looking for, you're here to give some input on, are you recommending a certain price level or?
Yeah, just give you an overview of what's going to impact that price this year. I'm George Higley.
George, Andrew Basil,
Nice to see you.
nice to see you.
And since George has been here
Nice to meet you.
since the original recommendation, things have
Yeah,
changed.
we've done some, really based on some feedback, we've done some deeper digging, pulling all the resources, looking at mainly the labor, how PEAS is impacting, pulling those documents, because that's a significant impact. So, looking at next year, PEAS and those rates are going up, basically we're seeing those move from 12.36% up to 16.93%. It's about a $32,000 impact. if we just said, well, let's just go along and try to move sales to cover that. But what's impacting it on the back end right now is the enrollment declined 84 students. Right now, as far as disposable income for students, it's pretty much flat, just because of the economic environment we're dealing in right now. And we're looking at a lunch price next year, actually looking at taking lunch up 15 cents and breakfast a nickel. And the main reason on that, it covers the Peasers and pretty much nets that Peasers change out.
Okay. I guess I have a couple of questions, and this may not necessarily pertain to you as it does more or less to the business office and stuff. So I guess what I'm wondering about, and I'm going to kind of refer back to our audit and the proprietary fund. In the audit, we've been looking at operating losses of, over the last 5 years. They started at $360,000, went to $375, $506, $535, and then $600,000 respectively over the last 5 years. Getting worse, right, in terms of the operating loss. But then when you add in the non-operating revenue, we had a net change in assets to the positive in 2008 of $85,000, a net change in assets to the positive in 2009 of $97,000, and then in 2010 we had a net change in assets of negative $6,800. And then in 2011 it was negative $28,000, and then this past year it was negative $101,000. So when I brought this up after the 2010 audit, I was told we shouldn't be paying attention necessarily to operating loss and profit, but more or less on the change in assets. And one of the things the auditor had said in 2010 was the way you control that is to increase prices. So even though we increased prices last year, that operating that change in net assets has been growing depreciatively or appreciatively over the last 3 years by hundreds of thousands of dollars. We swung almost $200,000 from 2009 to 2012. So I'm just kind of curious what your guys' thought is on that.
Well, I can tell you probably a big majority of that is for not increasing prices for 3 years.
Right.
So we got ourselves into a hole, obviously, and then you had not only labor costs going up, your Peasers is going up, plus you have all of your other ancillary costs going up. I guess one of my main concerns is we just don't want to outprice ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think there gets to be a point. I don't want to make lunch $10 because there's going to be a point when we're not even going to be able to make the revenue that we think we're going to make because it's cheaper for kids to pack. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what the happy medium is. You're right. The only way to deplete that is to raise your revenue. And how else do you do that but the lunch and breakfast prices?
We've gone from. I guess what I'm concerned about is we've gone from, total net assets of $255,000 in 2008 to a high of $353,000 in 2009, and now we're back down to $216,000 in 2012. I shudder to think what it's going to be in 2013. At what point, if we run negative in total net assets,
then you're going to be infusing from the general fund, which is what you don't want to do.
We're going to be subsidizing our...
Correct. You don't
lunch.
Want to have a huge swing. You don't want to have a huge fund balance in this fund. You're here to kind of break even. Even when we file the report at the end of the year, you can only have up to 3 months of operating revenue. If you don't, then you have to give them a plan of how you're going to deplete that. So while I hear you, I am concerned as well. From what we've done, it appears that the 15 cents and the 5 cents now will cover that for 13-14. I don't know, though. I don't know what you guys want to chime in.
I guess I'm leaning a little bit more aggressively. And the reason for that is, I guess you had supplied me with some numbers in terms of number of lunches that were sold and stuff. And I'm not sure if something happened with this. I noticed that the adults, in terms of breakfast, did you guys look at that? It went from 469 to 9.
Yeah, you're operating two different software platforms. Digging into that, it looks like the previous way there was a key mechanism to record that, and now it's pushed on an a la carte key. So it just changed kind of the funnels, because when I matched it up to our revenue, because it's how I did it, pulled into the revenue that reports on our side.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, it's showing that there's a decline, but not a decline like.
I mean, that's a decline of like 4,000%.
Right, yeah, it's not.
Yeah. So where is that being recorded then? Is it being recorded under paid as opposed to adult, or is it not being recorded at all?
A la
Or-
carte.
Okay.
But that's not on the list. then.
Right, yeah. That's kind of just a supplemental thing.
And that's the same thing over on the lunch side. We went from 3,000, 4,000 lunches to 280, 103.
Right.
That's now, there should be a separate column a la carte.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, going forward next year, in the next school year, looking in right now to see if we can identify and put that key back on this, because the tool was there before.
Yeah. I mean, when I was looking at the numbers you guys gave us, when I was looking at Montgomery County's lunch prices, Chester County's lunch prices, Berks County's lunch prices, I was thinking of being a little bit more aggressive in terms of raising adult fees to by $1. I mean, it's amazing to me that I think an adult should be able to pay $4.50 or for lunch, or $3 for lunch. I mean, you can't go to McDonald's and get lunch for what they're paying here, $3, $2.90 or whatever it is. $3, $3.50, and in terms of the secondary and middle or elementary school prices, I was thinking $2.75 and $2.50.
What are those now?
So for lunch, let me just start with lunch. So I was thinking $4.50, $2.75, and $2.50, which are about what's being charged in Montgomery County. And then in terms of breakfast, I was thinking $3 for an adult, $1.50 for the high school, middle school, and then $1.35 for the elementary, which again I think is on par with what the Berks County average is $1.33. It's only 2 cents higher than that. And in terms of Berks County average is $1.44 and $1.45 for high school and middle school. I'm proposing $1.50. Montgomery's $1.56.
So if you did what you're suggesting, and if you guys sort of ran these numbers at a high level, and you think the numbers you just gave us, 15 cents and 5 cents, gives you a break even, then what do you do with that potential?
Well, I mean, mine are like 35 and 45 cent increases on the lunch side, and 20 cents and 10 cents increases on the breakfast side, and then for the adults it's $1. So I don't know I tried to run the numbers in terms of.
Well, let's say it is a surplus for the sake of discussion.
Yeah.
What happens with that surplus?
It will remain in that account, but what that will do is when equipment's going down, which hopefully when the new GM comes in, and hopefully that person along with Kenny can go maybe through our building. So I know that was a question you asked.
Yeah.
When are we maybe going to need to replace equipment? Because that's what this fund is also for. You want to be able to replace your steamers like you guys approved a couple months ago that we just replaced for like $34,000. You want to take that out of here. You don't want to take it out of your general operating fund.
Right.
So that will only help the replacement of things, of equipment.
Okay. And any surplus stays in that account?
Correct. It
and
cannot
go anywhere else?
That is correct.
Why not? I'm okay with that. I mean, it doesn't sound unreasonable numbers to me.
I'm not really worried about the adult one, because I don't think I'm a little concerned about the students, but especially for secondary and the high school, because I know high school, the kids probably spend more than that because they probably a la carte a lot.
They probably, yeah, they do.
So, you know what I mean? I think by jumping, now when we raise this, what happens to a la carte prices? Do they go up also?
Well, we're probably gonna have to look at those.
See, I think those are where, if you're gonna do just, again, my suggestion would be spread it out. Put somewhat, maybe compromise between what Mr. Basil said, what you guys said, but I think that, especially at the high school, I think the a la carte's the thing we should look at increasing, again, a little bit more, because I know, having 3 kids going through the program, they do more of that than just a meal.
Yeah, I think
You know what I'm saying? In fact, I'm sorry, I think faculty does that too.
yeah, I think the price points. I mean, the $2.75, and don't take me out of context here, but that could be a price point that you may get a little pushback on the kids. They may all
Correct.
jump to a la carte. So then the trade-off there is how much reimbursement.
And then,
Less,
yeah, correct.
right,
And
less reimbursement,
plus
'cause we won't
parents
have
think the kids are
reimbursable
actually
meals.
buying the meals and they're not.
Right.
So they'll actually spend more of it. So I don't know if you want to, again, I'm not trying to muddy the waters, but I think maybe you should look at the a la carte, a small increase in this, and also increase in the a la carte stuff, and I don't know what it is.
Because it's not, I mean, looking at, working with the POS system myself this week, I mean, and last week, there's not a whole lot of what I would call disposable income, just people throwing $100 on their bank.
Correct.
So it's kind of, you know, I think I saw the highest balance in there was $20. So, not a lot of disposable income.
Again, it's just a
I mean, I
suggestion
think,
that we should-
I think we're kind of coming in at, the cart before the horse. We're trying to pick a price, and then we're wondering what the outcome is going to be. I mean, what I was trying to do is, when I asked for the numbers, the number of kids that are eating the different lunches and menus and all that kind of stuff, I was trying to get a sense of what are the numbers on an annual basis in terms of free and reduced, paid, and adults for breakfast and lunch. And if we have those over the last 5 years and we get a sense of how that correlates with enrollment, we can see how many lunches or breakfasts we're consuming on an annual basis. And then you can sit there and say, okay, well, now let's look at our budget and say, all right, we got $200,000 in net assets in there. How much do we need going forward? And are there some capital expenses that are coming up? Now, how do we fund these things? How do we keep pace with PSERS? And you build a model, and then you say, okay, now how do we adjust prices to keep pace with our obligations? And if the goal is to have a
3 months.
a operating loss or profit of zero every year, but we're going to want some amount of money left in the kitty in terms of the proprietary fund. What's the level that we would recommend to have in there? Is it 200,000? Is it 300,000? I don't know what the right level is, but that would be my recommendation. Maybe not. We need to make a decision on this in the next couple of weeks, but going forward, I think we should build a model so we're not just picking numbers out of the air every year. I mean, I just feel like we're just kind of like, well, what is everybody else doing? All right, let's just price ourselves at the average and see if that works. And looking at the audits, we're losing money, hand over fist one year to the next. I mean, $100,000 this past year, $30,000 the year before.
But again, I would try to look, especially at the high school, does the middle school, do they do a la carte? I don't
Yes, sir.
know. They do. So I think between those two, you should look at that, raising those.
What is the a la carte menu? Is there a price for that, or is it just whatever they pick, and that's the new number?
It's whatever you pick.
Yeah, it's basically.
You buy an apple, you pay X. You buy.
Is there an average price for a la carte that you could derive from your system, saying, look, these are the number of a la cartes, and this is the dollar figure that we generate, so that turns out to an average price of, I don't know, pick a number, $1.75 a meal for a la carte?
Yeah, we can calm down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be easier for us to sort of
Because I
quantify.
guess that's what they end up doing. They don't, like I said, at least mine, they buy the meal. Well, especially at the high school level. They just didn't buy, I guess the meal includes milk and all that.
Yeah, my kids the same way.
They don't buy the milk, they buy bottled water or whatever. So I think those are the things you have to look at, especially secondary and middle school. I'm not opposed to raising fees, but I think we have to look at that. That's part of the thing we have to look at. I think that's where we have to look at raising some of that stuff. Because I think even if you raise it to, like you said, $2.75, kids will just jump off there and just buy a la carte.
Right.
Whatever. It's just,
It's an important consideration. So I don't think we've made a decision tonight. Are you guys going to be able to come back to us with some information via email so that we can kind of push this along? I mean, obviously you guys like to have a decision in May, right?
Yeah, now normally the board didn't approve a la carte prices. Am I hearing that now you would like to do that in conjunction with this?
Well, we would like to analyze it here at the committee level. I don't know
Yeah.
about approving it at the board, but.
I don't know how you'd
I'd like to kind of
approve
talk
a
through it.
specific a la carte price.
well, who sets them then? You guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've always been
It'd be nice just for discussion at the committee
Okay.
here.
I mean, I'd like to see,
We can pull the report by the mix. what
if
it
you
is.
could show us, I mean, I'd like to be able to see, like, what are the number of meals that are being, produced here in the school district over the last few years, taking into consideration this a la carte number too, because obviously that's going to be a factor. So when you take these numbers that we're proposing, you pop them into the system, you can make an assumption of X number of meals per day and put these numbers in there, and then we can generate, okay, well, this is the extra revenue these price increases are going to generate on an annual basis. And then maybe you guys at the business office can get back to us with some recommendations. Well, what should that fund balance be? That net asset value of that fund balance, that proprietary fund. Should it be 200, which is where we are now? Should it be 100? Then we can spend it down. You're recommending something higher. I think you need to get together with Ken Smith and Sodexo and take a look at our capital needs going forward. I don't know what big expenses we may have coming at us, if any. Maybe it's not. Maybe
Just
we just need to keep pace with PSERS. I don't know.
Yeah. And we can look at a capital plan too, as far as equipment replacements.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Before we move on, any comments from the public? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice, George.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice to meet you. Third thing on the agenda was the swap valuation update. Thank you for providing that. I think my memory serves me as like 1.7 million in the hole or underwater. Correct?
Yep, 1.769 as of the 17th.
Is it possible to see what the total amount of extra interest payments were made to date? Can you get, I know it was like 330 or something the last time we...
The very last time we just actually received $600, but I have
see.
that. I can email that out.
Okay. Before we move on to transition house, the debt update, we have about $90 million in outstanding debt. Quickly on the next time we look at something like that, I know the interest rates range on some of those bond floats, correct? Some from like 3.5 to 5. They float a little bit.
Yes.
On two of those, I think it's the 2009 and 2011. Are any of those able to be refinanced in the next?
No.
No, those are non-callable,
I don't have them on
refundable.
here, but I think I want to say 2017 may be the next time that we can. But I
Right,
will
that's
let you
the
know.
07 and 08 series, right? I'm sorry, the 07 and the capital. Can we refund the capital lease?
We can, but it's at 101%. Lou Verdelli from RBC was looking at that with M&T, but there's some kind of clause in there
Yeah.
that it's not beneficial for us to do it. He's been trying
Ever?
everything to get us
Even-
out of.
Even when interest rates are at a higher,
Well,
if we're
because
paying
there's
8%
a,
on that, and we can get it at 3.5, and even if you do 101% of the total principal, I mean, I would still think that would be a savings there.
He's tried to, but I mean, I can certainly
Yeah.
ask him to look at it again.
I know those dates are, a couple of years away yet, but I was just kind of curious as to, maybe on the next time we have one of these sheets, I kind of highlighted on mine when the callable dates are.
Yeah, I have one that has it on, but this one doesn't. So.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the transition house. One of the things when we talked about this annual budget, one of the ideas of generating some revenue to solve the budget deficit was to sell the transition house, and we made an assumption of like $200,000 in the sale of the house that we plugged into our budget. I believe that number's still in there, correct?
It is.
Yeah. So instead of selling the house, the idea came up, well, can we simply refinance the house, or do we just get a line of credit and use that as a means of financing our budget deficit? And the response we got back from Subers was really we're not allowed to have a line of credit. We'd have to issue tax anticipation revenue notes.
It's pretty much the sum of what Megan
Right.
had, yes.
And then in lieu of that, have we talked to anybody about refinancing?
Well, I did. I mean, prior to that.
Yeah. It's been a while
The
since we
only
talked
one,
about it.
the only person that actually, which I sent out to you a while ago, was Fulton Bank.
Yeah.
But that was for a line of credit. No one would do a refi because we don't have a quote-unquote mortgage on it.
Yeah.
It was all a line of credit. But
They wouldn't issue just a regular note, as opposed
like
to
I said, the
line
only
of
thing I got from Fulton Bank was that they would provide us working capital. It's just a working capital line of credit. But
Yeah.
according to what Megan says, I don't believe we can do that. Commerce Bank came back and said no, they couldn't help us. New Penn Financial said they don't do anything like that. PNC,
They don't provide loans on.
well, he said they only deal with first mortgages outside of their realm. They cannot help us out with that.
Well, that would be a first mortgage. Oh, they're talking about refinancing a first mortgage.
Yeah.
I see.
I contacted First Niagara, PNC, National Penn. I did talk to the gentleman that Kevin had passed me along at this, but he didn't even really want to talk to me until it was okay with the solicitor, which obviously I would go there, but I wanted to try to get my ducks in a row first. But
Okay, so has there been any attempt to go back and say, look, lines of credit that just don't work? We're actually talking about putting a note on the property and using the property as a mortgage.
no,
Okay.
but I can. I
I'm
didn't
just
know
thinking 'cause-
where we were going with it. I mean,
Well, the only thing I'm
first-
thinking is that in like 2 months, we either need to sell the house and have $200,000 to put in the hole in the budget, or we need to use another $200,000 out of the fund balance or some other place to fill the hole in the budget. So refinancing it, I think, would be the easiest thing to do than trying to sell it.
But they don't like, I guess, the word refinance because there's no
Okay,
current
well,
mortgage on there.
let's finance the house. It's not really refinancing, it's financing the, I mean, we did finance it with equity, but now we're going to say, look, we're just going to put debt on the property. Can we do that?
Well, Brian did talk about the fact that since we annexed the property, selling it isn't just as easy as it may sound, because now it's considered part of the total district property. It's
Did we
not-
actually annex it, though?
Yes, we did.
We eliminated the lot lines?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we did.
I didn't think we did.
I thought we did. I thought
We can
did.
ask Subers
Yeah,
at the
I'm pretty
meeting
sure we
tonight.
did, because we wouldn't be able to do anything with it if we needed to. At one time, remember, we were gonna take down the house. So I think.
Because we annexed it, it's really just like another
just
appendage.
part of
It's
the
part of
property.
the, part of the total high school property.
Well, then you
now.
can't, if that's the case and the property lines are gone,
Then we can't do it.
because we went through a subdivision and you actually unsubdivided the lot, is basically what you did, then you'd have to re-subdivide that parcel before you could sell it.
Correct.
That was, and we can double check that with Brian, but I do
Which means
believe
you're
when we
not-
took
you
that
probably-
property, we annexed
You
that.
probably can't give a note against it then, Andrew, because it's
Well,
probably.
you can't.
Because it'd be, yeah, you'd be doing it,
Well,
well.
then
you
we need
could-
to have that
You could get a
question
note
answered.
against the whole high school then.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the high
Well, you're
school
just
property.
incurring more, yeah. Well, that's a big issue then. We need to get that question resolved.
I just know that was part of the conversation when we,
I thought, and a lot of times this is what you do as a developer, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't recollect it properly, but sometimes if you have a house and you're just using that as part of the overall calculations in terms of setbacks or open space or that type of thing, you don't necessarily have to eliminate the lot lines. You still have the same tax ID number, it's still a separate tax parcel, the lot lines are still in place, and what you're doing is you're just saying, well, look, because we own that property, we can now fudge things like setbacks from property lines and things of that other issue.
I'd have to go back to
in terms of
my
parking and
notes, but I
stormwater.
think as part of, when we were dealing with the township, to be able to do the whole parking thing with that, we had to annex the land. So Brian would have done that work for us, so he would know
Okay.
tonight when we talked to him. But I remember him saying that when we brought this up the first blush through it, and he said, well, he felt the only way you could sell it was if you, quote, unannexed the land.
Well, that's
a huge
If it's a
legal
reverse
cost.
subdivision, then that's a problem.
And,
That's like a 3 to
Danielle,
6 month issue.
I'm sorry, are you sure it's in the budget?
It's in the budget. You're not going to see it on there because that's the change.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's-
It's in the original.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have a
Just take it
discussion
out now.
tonight about pulling
Okay,
that
that's
out.
fine.
And then I would add back, obviously, the 12,000 for revenue for the
Yeah, you'd add back the 12, pull that out, but then we're going to have to
understood.
pull that from fund balance or something for the
Understood.
time being. Okay, so let's just, while we're having that conversation, move into the budget worksheet.
I'm not sure. I don't know how I want to say this with the public and the newspaper and everybody here.
Carefully.
Well, other than the changes from the last time that this was presented, obviously, were the medical rate decreases, which I had noted. They went down from the 8% down to the 5.5. The next line item, I was told to put that in there by your negotiating team, but my understanding was that there was supposed to be some kind of announcement before I officially kind of said this.
That's why I'm trying to read what it says, but yeah,
The-
that's, I would not say anything.
Okay. So basically, that's really what the next. Yeah, they
Yeah,
have it.
that one. It's pre-deliberational.
Yeah. So
Sorry about that. We have to
tried to warn
redact
you.
that number.
even if we go over this tonight, I don't want to say it until.
June, if you don't mind.
Tried to warn you, but I didn't want to make it look like we were taking paper back.
Well, by all means, warn me. Okay, so there's a number in here just for the record. There's a number that we have in the budget workshop sheet that has
Don't mention who.
a negotiation with a particular employment group
That's what.
Which is not
that
officially
is not
approved.
officially approved or announced, and so we had to kind of redact that information from the public viewing. All right? Okay, so that number's in
Hard to
there.
read anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
all right.
anyway, that is in there. Like I said, that's what I was told to kind of go ahead and count that in there.
Okay, and that's subject to change, too, I would
It is
imagine.
subject to change once the official,
In color,
I think,
you can see it.
CPI comes out, that's used for that is May, which comes out June, I want to say maybe 15th or 18th. What we can talk about down there on the revenue side, well, the one is obviously related to that, but the other one, you're going to see down there an increase in our retirement reimbursement of about $94,000. This is based on feedback we received from PDE when they were reviewing our exceptions that we submitted for special ed and for retirement for this year. They actually called Mark. I was out of the office that day. But as a rule of thumb for reimbursement for retirement, I've been using 50% of what our expenditure is. Mm-hmm. They said that it's closer to 52.5% to 55%. So with our exception that they're approving, they use the 52.5. So Mark and I are obviously updating our calculation, and we've now adjusted that to be 52.5% of our expenses rather than the 50%. I think we both wanted to kind of see where we come in next year rather than go all the way up to the 55% and just not make that huge adjustment. But that is what that $94,000, like I said, was from their feedback when they approved our exception.
Okay. So this number, so we typically use 50% in terms of our refund rate. PDE said no, it's closer to 52 to 55, and we're plugging in 52.5 for the time being to see how that measures up.
And that matches right with the retirement exception. They use the 52.5, so for them to use that, I had to supplement, the revenue based on that.
Okay. So net, with a tax increase to the index and the eliminations that we discussed to date, some fruits from negotiation, but we're not really sure what that final number is going to be. And if we pull out the transition house assumption, we're looking at probably $1.7 million worth of fund balance use, as opposed to the 2 point whatever we had originally discussed way back in March.
I don't even honestly remember what it was back then.
Okay.
I would have to pull mine.
Okay. I don't have that sheet with me.
Plus, there will be other changes, obviously, depending upon what the board does or what happens with other negotiations. And I know the bumping, I've received a new list from just
That's
the bumping and all that, so that those numbers can all change.
Is that why we see so much variation here on the box on the right? I mean, I noticed like elimination of elementary basic skills, negative 282 versus now negative 230, right? And I mean, that's a $50,000 swing.
It's different people from what the original one was to now it's a different person.
Same thing with elementary band. Originally it was a savings 117, now it's a savings 170.
And that one I think went from one position to 1.5 to maybe 2 or something like that.
Well, it's a product of people changing certifications, tweaking the enrollment, and
It's also with kindergarten back in, which changed the whole thing.
That's true. You're right, yes.
So...
And that's only going to change more until we get down to the final days.
Is it because people are taking classes or something?
Because of the bumping.
Well, I know there's bumping,
let's just say if let's just say, for example,
but you think after the first rotation of bumping, I mean, what's left to happen in the next 60 days?
The salaries changed due to people coming back in because kindergarten was kept in the budget. So the first level was with kindergarten, without kindergarten, which bumped out a whole lot of other people. With it being back in, now we're looking at the other proposed eliminations, and that's a different group now because the kindergarten people had seniority over some of the groups. And then it does have to do with new certification that is being acquired right now, that up until June, if they get another cert area,
to save their job, then somebody else gets bumped.
And I believe there was some clarification based on LTS qualification, so that has now since, it's not reflected in here, but it's since reflected things that we've been looking at.
Given based upon long-term self-position in our district.
So, Danielle, the numbers that are in the boxes on the right here, are those reflected in the numbers in the left-hand column?
I tried to make, because people on the left hand, we were trying to say, okay, elementary Teachers, that's what it was as of, you'll see there, I think,
So
325.
reduction, elimination, of elementary basic skills at 12,190 on line 25, E25. You don't have a thing there. So it's about halfway down. You'll see a number reduce it by 900, which is probably the smallest number. Then behind that is 12. I'm just
Right.
kind of curious. That is derived from some change down here in between the 282 and the 229 on the right-hand side.
It is, but then if you also went up, you had a $40,000
Yeah.
elementary basic skill. It's,
Yeah.
I was trying to take what we originally proposed in the original preliminary budget, which was the 282,
Mhm.
and then any changes that came about. There should be probably another one. Basic skills, 12,000. That's exactly on in the green that was on 325. Those are the numbers that are in the budget for those.
So if I were to
reductions
add the
right now.
40 and the 12, that should give me the $52,000 difference.
It should.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was just trying to make
I
sure I
was
could
trying to
figure out
make
what the
it-
numbers were.
Because when we were sitting at board meetings, everybody says, okay, well, what's that now? I was trying to make it that we could just look down and see what's reflected in here, because
Okay.
it's going all over the place.
Just for the record also, what's not on here is whatever eventually happens with APC.
Correct?
That
Right.
number's not reflected in here at all yet, obviously because the board hasn't taken
No
action on it.
decision.
But
Okay.
that decision is upon the board within the next 3 weeks.
And then
Okay.
that could potentially affect.
And yeah.
And then that has further impact on staffing.
Well, it may be prudent, I think, to start running that scenario on the side in case the board does make that decision, so that we know, you're not then starting to work the numbers
Right.
in May.
I already have the numbers,
All
but
right, all right. Well, that's good. You don't have to share them with
We're
us
playing
just yet.
chess with you
I
there.
already have them.
We're already ahead of that one.
But
All
I didn't
right.
want to assume, so.
Okay.
But just for the press and it is a hypothetical at this point, but the reality is drawing nearer.
Okay. Frank, did you have any questions? Kevin?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
You guys don't have a whole lot of information out there anymore, but do you have any questions on the budget?
Do we have to get a Ray Shane's picture of that budget?
Ray's his picture, was it written, drawn on the budget somewhere? We'll make sure it disappears. All right, let's see.
We have it on the voice recording though.
Okay, so the formula for the cyber charter homeschooled students to participate in class and sports offerings. How are you guys making out on that?
Okay.
That's Marcus.
Yes. I have the outline model all ready to go. I have the expenditures put out already. So I have like
You have the what?
expenditures.
Expenditures.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I did was I took the budget. I basically broke it apart.
Mhm.
High school, middle school, elementary, transportation, athletics,
Mhm.
and then I just dumped it by regular ed, special ed. So I come down to 2 breakouts. Basically, what we have for cyber charter. Then I start to take the admin costs and then divide it out by basically enrollment. So I have that piece done. And now I'm taking the reimbursement that we get from the state and deducting that off the numbers.
Are your facility costs and technology costs and those other things built in to
Yeah.
which part of those pieces?
Well, if it's allocated directly to the school district in the budget,
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, if it's allocated
To the
directly to the
school?
school in the budget, it's in that school. If it's part of the admin costs, like the big group
Yeah.
out there, it's our overhead, I
As
allocate
part
it
of
by-
administrative overhead
correct.
calculation. Got
I
it.
allocate it by percentage of enrollment in that school.
Okay.
So if there's 1,000 kids in each school, it would be basically a third.
Right.
And then whatever, I can actually show you the model I have.
Have you started to work numbers through the model?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what are you guys coming up with in terms of like dollars? I mean, when you start running the model, do the numbers that are coming out of the model seem to make market sense in terms of this is what we should charge for a class, or is it $9 for flute lessons for an entire year, or is it $9,000 for flute lessons for the entire
Well,
year? I mean, like, what are you guys coming up with?
I didn't break it down to the class. What the class would be at basically by credit. I basically am trying to get what the cost is
Per credit?
student,
Or per,
and then we'll go down from there.
Okay.
But the key thing is getting that reimbursement in, because I have basically the gross cost. So this is all of our expenditures, debt service,
Right.
broken out as best as possible to where it's applicable. So if the middle school is, I think that was in 2007, M&T, I think. So I put a big chunk of that to the middle school. So I try to break out almost exactly where the dollars are flowing. And the cost, I actually kind of validated the cost of what we're paying for based upon right now for our regular ed charter, or cyber charter, and the special ed cyber charter. The cost right now for the gross budget is about, for high school, regular ed is $11,000 per student before any type of reimbursement. The special ed is about 17. For middle school, it's 12,000 and 16. Elementary, it's 11,000 and 15. Regular ed transportation, meaning the normal transportation of the Daniel Boone students, is about $618 per student. Transportation for non-pubs, special eds, $2,900 per student. And athletics right now are $967 for high school and $406 for middle school. So, and that's, once again, before any type of reimbursement. So as I start breaking out the reimbursement, which I started to, that will actually come down. And then I'll divide it by credit hours for the high school and see where we end up being.
Okay.
But it's kind of like, I try to be as high-level granular as possible. I didn't really want to get down into like, well, this is what this Spanish teacher's salary is, so that...
No, I don't think you should. I think you should be looking at it from the way you've approached it, which is what are our overhead costs, and what is the cost to offer a particular sport or a class or something else, and be able to just give it. We don't need to make this too complicated, right? So
right. And what I try to do is I use the budget, but I basically use it as the numbers. So meaning if you want to see actual, I can just take the same account and dump it in as actual and say, okay, well, this is what the actual cost versus the budgeted cost. So you can kind of see the variance of like, well, okay, it gives you another tool.
We're hopeful that our actual costs are getting closer and closer
right.
to our budgeted costs.
Well, yeah,
right?
that's the goal, right?
Right.
But it would give us another tool in that aspect to see budget versus actual variance.
That'd be great. That'd be a good tool to have.
Yeah. So it's coming along. I would have had it probably done today, but we kind of ran into the meals. And kind of helped George out with that, so I gave some time, but it would have been done today. But I could probably have the numbers emailed to you later this week.
That'd be great.
Maybe tomorrow even.
Okay.
Once Daniel and I actually officially review what we did, and I get all of her input on it, then we'll go from there.
Look, absolutely. I mean, if you're looking, if you guys have, iteration 1 and it's ready for us, then I think we'd be happy to see it and give you some feedback on it, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions. So. When you like I said, you haven't quite run the model then yet on a credit hour basis?
No, not on a credit hour basis. Just basically building down.
Yeah.
From there to just, it's like these are our major buckets, and then go from the credit hour then.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you guys have any questions?
No.
Any questions from the public on that? All right.
I'd like to thank Mark for his work on this. This has been it's a difficult thing to try to manipulate, and I think he's done a good job of it so far in trying to come up with something.
Absolutely. Well, I think at the end of the day, it's necessary, because I think you're going to have more students doing sort of an a la carte sort of, hey, we're going to do cyber or we're going to do charter, but then we want to come to school and supplement that with X, Y, and Z classes or sports or something else. And we need to know what's an appropriate rate to be charging for that. So, okay, so last time we met back in January, you guys were going to talk to the guys at PFM about their model and see if it's, they could customize that for us and make things easier and so on and so forth. How's that go?
We did talk to him. He actually came out, took some information with him, and then kind of emailed us back. Our big concern was the salaries, obviously, because it's not just a generic, put the percentage in. You've seen the model. And pretty much what he came up with is kind of what I already do to even start a budget process.
Right.
So,
not helpful? Or
if you want something that we can get up and running, quote unquote, tomorrow, but not have the salary piece tailored to the way we need it, we could go with them. Because Mark thinks, and I think he can as well, develop a model for us and not pay the
$20,000.
Commit us $6,000 for 3 years or $7,500 for 1 year, and it really not be what we want. we've pretty much already have the foundation of the salary piece, because he's even working with what I had done for when we're giving you guys projections of where we're going to be at the end of the year.
So for what we would buy for $7,500, how many hours would it take you to build that? To get to that?
Kind of already laying some of the foundation now as I'm going through with doing the budget projections. So I'm breaking out a lot of the component pieces to get an actual, like a more granular projection on a lot of the different account functions. An estimate of hours.
Weeks, day, whatever.
I don't know if I could really give you a good, clear-cut estimate right now. I mean, if you said
If that's all you did, starting Monday, next week, we said, Mark, you're going to do nothing but work on a 5-year model. How many days would it take you to do that?
I could probably have it, I would probably say by the end of May.
It would
If
take
that's
you,
all you did.
If that's all
I
you did,
yeah.
it'd take you
30 days?
more than that, 40 days of 8 hours a day.
Oh,
160 hours.
yeah, probably.
4 weeks.
4 weeks. I probably could get something up. I mean, would it be as bells and whistles as what the model that we looked at? Probably not exactly that, but
4 weeks.
4 weeks would be 160, but
7,500.
5 weeks would be,
I mean, if that's all I did, there's nothing else.
200 hours, 7,500, you're looking at 30.
Now, if you're looking at if we did that for a year,
Probably worth 7,500.
That's what I like
Probably
where Frank was going with
get the
this. is
7,500
Just
to
spend
get 80%
7,500
there, and then
For the
you
to
year.
get the model,
get the
and
model.
then tweak it. It's just an Excel model,
Right.
right? But it's a basis then you can use to then start saying, well, look, we're going to take the salary tab.
Are we
And,
allowed to tweak it based on your salaries?
We get the model.
Okay. So in other words,
It's basically purchasing the initial model and then the support, and then I guess they dump all your numbers in for you. And
In the original, right, we would send them all of our financial report, all of our annual financial reports and stuff, and they would load everything into the original model and send it to us.
Gotcha.
So that part would be done.
right.
Right.
Then we
And
could
that's some
take
hours
that.
there.
We could take that, and then we would need to implement other worksheets or whatnot
Yeah.
for our salary piece. But that would be ours. We would have that,
Okay,
and
so
we
what-
can use it. Just if you did the 1 year, my understanding is we wouldn't send them our financial reports year after year, and they keep inputting. That would be up to us at that point
Right.
then,
Which is what we
which
do
is
anyway.
fine.
so if we do a one-time $7,500 hit, you add the 80%
start.
of what you need to go.
Right.
Is that
Pretty
what-
much.
Is that what it is? Like 80%?
Plus they load
So in
the
other words,
model.
you'd have to spend maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks versus 5 weeks.
yeah, which the
And
biggest
maybe just, look, I don't know if you're here for the presentation on the model, but, the model's got lots of different components. It's got Peasers, it's got a bunch of other assumptions in there. You can go through the different components of it, and it's got some nice bells and whistles in terms of graphs and all that kind of stuff that it does. But for the most part, obviously where they're going to be spending, once the debt data is inserted in the
Correct.
model, that's not going to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what these guys are going to be working on an annual basis or monthly or quarterly or whatever is the shuffling of the salaries and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to be working with it anyways. I think it's $7,500 well spent. In my opinion, I think you get this thing up and
I think
running.
you
And
can save it, yeah.
I think it is too, as long as you guys think you have the time.
To massage it.
Yeah.
Once we buy
All
it.
right, that's always been the issue, right? Is when's the right time? Do you have the time to?
It
do what
has
you need
been,
to
but
do?
I think if we got that model, I think that would only help with what Mark's doing right now with projections. So I think with the time he's spending on the projections could be spent on massaging
yeah,
the
the
model.
time.
Right.
I don't think the time will be an issue. I mean,
Okay.
we'll make the time. It's about whether or not you want to go forward and put the initial outlay out now, or you want to kind of wait to see what we can do. I mean, that's kind of the decision.
I don't want you to spend a lot of
200
time
hours on it and then
trial and error,
Right.
and trying to figure it out. I know what it's like to build models. It can be time consuming. If you have one error in there, all the data is crap. So that's
Just like that.
Yeah, I need to plug in. Is what I need to do.
Obnoxious there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's commendable that you're trying to build it. I just think maybe it might be a better idea to just buy it
Well, I mean,
80% and work on the
and that's
20.
fine. I mean, because we'll still take what we already are doing for the wages, and we'll actually probably build a wage model out of that, like a position control model, which we could use different ways, and then run all of our projections off of that position control model.
And like Andrew said,
Yeah.
you could spend $10,000 of your time and still not work.
Yeah, it's not.
I think we've massaged it. I think it's time to move this forward.
Should.
All right, so.
Do I need a board vote on that?
Well,
or-
we'll make a board
Okay.
vote on it, but I mean, I had, recommendation from the committee
Correct.
to spend the $7,500 to
Okay.
get the model.
Let's see if it works.
Okay, and then the other thing was we're going to talk about all the little details in terms of custodial and credit risk and things of that nature from the auditor's report and recommendations you guys may have in terms of policy for investing of funds of the school district.
I guess the first thing, I'll just start real quick, and I know we've kind of been back and forth with some emails.
Yeah.
We left the last meeting to ask the auditor about putting all of our eggs kind of in one basket, or, knowing that FDIC insurance is the $250,000. She said because of the Act 72, it doesn't really matter how much money is in a financial institution. That particular institution is required to carry collateral covering 102% of the funds held. She said, obviously, the only issue you have is if the bank went under, but even when this happened a few years ago, all the public funds were recovered with the collateral. She said the only solutions are to hold the FDIC insured amounts in any one financial institution, or she said the easier solution is to monitor the credit rating and collateral held by the institutions we utilize, which is what we do. I know prior to me getting here, Ernie Wursler actually consolidated accounts because I think this district had accounts at
Yeah, we had like
several
18
different
accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to streamline. So I personally, and I think Mark as well, we don't necessarily recommend the first of taking $250,000 and putting it in several institutions. I think we need to kind of continue to where we go, maybe updating the policy.
Our total amount of funds is what, like 15 million? Was it more than that? I can't remember now.
Right now,
My spreadsheet is over by that pillar at this
Yeah,
point,
it's roughly
so-
15 million.
Right, okay. So we have $15 million worth of funds. There's 13 million with the PSFAL account, right? And then we've got 10,000 in National Penn, which is just, I'm assuming, a function of the sweep,
well,
right?
that kind of is just sitting there right now because National Penn, the sweeping kind of ends when the discount or when the penalty is over at the end of, it's the end of December, but till everything goes through and clears, it's January. Now, some of what might be in there is per cap. Are they still going
Yeah,
through there?
there's still some money going in. They do sweep it out now every once in a while. I guess when it reaches a certain limit. But the per capita.
Do we know what the
still-
limit is? Is it 10 grand?
Well,
Is it
I think I actually, no, I have them, the minimum I told them to keep in there is 10 grand.
Okay.
Because in case any
The
return
maximum,
checks came
right.
back or NSF checks or anything,
Right.
I kind of kept that 10,000.
Okay. And then the PLGIT,
The
which is
Pliget.
on Pliget, is $90,000.
Which I think Mark was actually looking at wanting to consolidate, correct?
Yeah, there's actually, we're not really,
What is that money?
it's, the money is,
Isn't Pliget?
it's it's this money market account. It's, right there. It's under
It's part of our
10,000.
general fund, it's part of
Well,
our
this
operating.
9,000 is this right here. That's in that
Yes.
pen.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the 90,000
Yeah, right.
Pliget, which is
Right there.
that's you keep
Yeah.
pointing to 9,000.
No, it's,
There
it's,
it is.
it's almost the same because the interest doesn't gain on it. So within
So
the
there
national
must be
pen-
more Pliget somewhere.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's also
Capital, maybe?
yeah, right there. 82,000.
Uh-huh.
So that's capital reserve. We're not going to touch that. Is where it is. But this Pliget right here, it's in under general fund.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that right there.
Mm-hmm. So you get $10,000.
Yeah.
It's kind of just sitting out there. It makes
Yeah.
more sense to move it
Is there
into
a
our
reason
liquid.
why, like, our general fund balance, is why these funds are sort of split as opposed to reserve funds sort of being, I don't know.
quite honestly, this is how it was
All in
set
one
up when I
place.
got
Yeah.
here, and this is sort of what Ernie was trying to consolidate. And now that Mark's here, and the two of us are understanding this even better yet,
Yeah.
we wanted to consolidate, but we kind of were holding off based on the conversation that we were having. We were hoping that you guys weren't looking at having us do the 250.
No, I think that's
250, so-
ridiculous. I mean, you'd be putting that stuff in like, yeah, at least
Well, and that's what we
Funds
thought,
every day.
but again, like I said, as
60
we're working
60
through it,
institutions, yeah.
we do want to try to consolidate if you guys, if you're okay with that, because obviously.
Absolutely. I think where I was going was the auditor was sort of intonating to hedging certain risks, and given what happened 5 years ago, where some very large banks completely went bust, it's not an unreasonable, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could have our funds with a particular lending institution, and then that institution is no longer here. So we're looking for recommendations as to what do we do to protect ourselves from that kind of risk.
Well, reviewing some of the policies, we definitely want to put in there with the government pools to have that AAA, or we're actually recommending and the auditor recommended
The BB.
a rating of BB, and that's the S&P rating.
Now, given how Moody's kind of screwed things up a couple of years ago and how they were rating municipalities and things of that nature and states and those types of things, and then Moody's suddenly said, "Oh, U.S. government no longer AAA rated, but stepped us down a notch." I'm just kind of curious. Should we be looking at a lower, like a double B rating is our threshold, or should we be looking at something higher than that?
That was her suggestion, so
Yeah.
I mean,
we can
we were flying with that, but we certainly can
make it a
make it a
AAA
or double A,
or I mean, it's up to our discretion at this point.
I mean, the
course it
two
is,
that
yeah.
we're in obviously are the AAAs, and those
Right.
really are the ones that I personally would stay
Yeah.
with. They're the ones I've known in all the institutions I've been in are those two. Not that something can't happen to them, but
Pliget is really big, and they hold a lot of the municipality bond money. So, like the county of Berks, almost all their money is managed by Pliget, and they have 6 to 7 active. Well, they had 5 active issues. So they are relatively safe, but anything can happen at any time.
Of course, there's nothing guaranteed. I guess what I'm
So-
just trying to go is in terms of a policy, we're looking for a recommendation to incorporate into a policy. So some board,
I
or
would say
in the
double.
future, a business manager in the future doesn't say, well, look, hedge funds look great right about now. We're going to take 10% of our assets and put them into hedge funds, and could be
Now nobody knows what's going on.
double B rated or whatever, and then because I don't know, the credit rating agencies aren't really minding the store too much, and next thing you know, we lose 10% of our assets in some.
Right. Yeah, we definitely don't want that to happen at all. So yeah, we can change it to a AA rating.
I think we would recommend the double A. I mean, if you think it should be higher, we will take your feedback.
No, I don't think
mean,
it should be higher. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
What else? I did pull some different policies down, and I know we were trying to look at that, but I think those were the
big
hitters.
big issue.
I think also percent of assets allocated to any particular investment. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want somebody saying, oh, well, we're going to take 13 out of our $15 million and put it in this investment. So a percentage of our total net assets, which I think is where you and I were missing each other on the emails, is I understand, percentage of the total assets, but my concern is risk is, a diversified portfolio. Do you want any certain percentage of all of your assets sitting in with one lender or in one segment of the market or whatever? Or do you want some diversification there in case something goes sour?
Our main investment is basically with PSDLIF,
right?
And it's the CD account. Now they split that CD. They take that money and invest into the CDs. I don't know if we have too much input as to what investment devices they choose.
Well, this concerns me with the percentage of our net assets when you're saying not all, and I hear where you're going, but because that's where most of our money is kept, that's who I do the investments with, obviously. They will do some investments. You'll see on your monthly board reports, like, I want to say 200,000 in this and that. But then what they have is they have this CD pool, and that's where they put, sometimes I have $8, $9, $10 million in there. What's nice about that is it's the highest rate that they have, And what it does is when we need that money, we don't suffer a penalty for pulling out early for interest. We still get the interest that we've. Right.
And when you say it's a CD pool, can you explain that?
It's, no, actually I can't. I would have to get more information for you. They just call it a pool. I can't think of what,
When we look at the statements,
I would say that it's.
Yeah. It's like there's like 3 different CD groups that they invest in. I don't know if it's by means of they're taking all the money that they've received from the school districts and put it into these CD groupings.
That's what I was going to say.
I know the one CD grouping is with I think it's GE or something. That we would have to get more definition for you.
I think CD pool term, but I can get more.
Right. So then you get in this whole issue of. Think about the CMBS market, right? So everybody said we're going to take the universe of mortgages, and we're going to break them down into tranches, grade A, B, C, D, E, F, right? And we're going to collateralize all those investments by the securities, which are these homes that back those things. Well, when entire tranches of the market go under, the whole pool caves like a house of cards. I'm not saying that that's what happens here, but I just think that as a district, we ought to understand what whoever has our money, what they're doing with it, and how that.
Agree, and we definitely can. I mean, they work well with us.
Yeah,
I mean, they're a great institution to be with because they.
Maybe they can send somebody out and just sort of explain to the board,
sure.
Or to this committee. Hey, look, this is what a CD pool is. This is how it works.
They would love
this is why we do that.
Committee.
That sort of thing. I think it helps the public understand where their money is being entrusted and that it is in a good place. I'm not challenging where it is. I just think that we need to understand it better.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly have them come out to a committee. That's fine. They would like to do that.
You guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'd like to hear what they say too. I'm just concerned that you try to be a financial investor. That's not your core competency.
That's not their job, right?
Yeah, you get stuck in the weeds of trying to figure out where every dollar's getting invested. That could really be time consuming.
And unfortunately, that's kind of why I rely on them, and
right,
I don't, because quite honestly, it is not my forte, but they've.
But
it'd be nice to know, though.
No, understood.
Talk to us.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
I'd like to know.
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
my own personal financial advisor comes out like 4 or 5 times a year just to show me stuff that I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So Liz is making an effort, right?
Is it a plus or a minus?
It's there. This okay, looks good.
So long as things are going well.
It's a check off. Okay.
Right. Look, we don't expect you guys to be investment advisors, but I mean, if the money's all sitting with this particular government fund, then what is it that they're doing with it? How are they earning interest on it for us and that sort of thing? And are there other things that they offer that we should be considering? I don't know. I mean,
quite honestly, we would like to move all of our daily, all of our VIS stuff with them, but we haven't done the RFP yet. But I know they'll come in. They don't charge fees for anything. They'll even get checks for us. So I mean,
Let's bring them in.
so I think we ought to be bringing them in to talk to them about solving some of the needs that we have. Okay. Is that it? Status of credit risk. Okay, so just one quick question before we move on. We had talked about doing something with the Commerce Bank, and they're going to pay us money for. How's that turning out? How much?
Oh, I'm trying to think what we.
Estimated $20,000 in.
I'll have to run the number.
Okay.
I had it the last time, but I don't have it this time. I'll email you when we're.
Are we close to that number, or is it?
I don't.
Didn't turn out quite the way we hoped.
Month we did
Can you get on?
I'm having really.
Okay.
That's all right. I mean, email it out to us.
No, I don't think we're close to it.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'll email that out.
Yeah, just email it to the board. I mean, because that was one of our assumptions in terms of our budget
and
last year.
I think that's the same thing that I have in for this year as well, or for
so if
13,
we need to revise something, then I just want to make sure that we're revising it. Do you guys have any other questions or comments or anything else? Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? No? All right. That's a wrap. Thank you, guys. This meeting ended at 7:11.